The guard's hand clamped around Nix's wrist before she could pull back from the rosebush. She'd only wanted to see if she could still do it. If the strange warmth that sometimes pooled in her palms meant anything, or if it was just another broken piece of her fractured mind. 3 days ago, she'd woken in the forest with no memory of the 6 years before. 3 days of her pack looking at her like she was a ghost. 3 days of whispers that cut worse than any blade. The dying roses had called to her, white petals browning at the edges, stems wilting in the summer heat. She'd touched one without thinking, and warmth had spread from her fingertips into the plant. The brown had retreated. The petals had lifted. Magic she didn't remember learning. Magic she shouldn't have. Witch blood. The guard's voice carried across the courtyard, and Nix's stomach dropped. The Omega's got witch blood. Heads turned. Conversations died. Her pack, the wolves who'd raised her until she was 16, before she vanished into a void she couldn't remember, stared at her with something worse than fear. Disgust. I didn't, Nix started, but the guard yanked her forward. Alpha Garrett needs to see this. The walk to the pack house felt endless. Nix's heart hammered against her ribs. Each beat a drum of panic she couldn't silence. Witch blood. The accusation was worse than being broken, worse than being scentless and strange. Witch blood meant corruption, meant she'd been touched by something unnatural. Maybe she had. She didn't know. Couldn't know. The 6 missing years were a black hole in her mind, and every time she tried to reach for them, pain lanced through her skull like broken glass. Alpha Garrett stood in his office with his arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. He'd been kind once, before she disappeared. Now he looked at her the way someone might look at a rabid dog. Show me, he said. The guard shoved her toward the potted plant on the windowsill. Another dying thing, leaves yellowed and curling. Nix's hands trembled as she reached out. The warmth came easier this time, flooding through her palms and into the soil. Green spread through the leaves like watercolor bleeding across paper. Garrett's jaw tightened. Where did you learn this? I don't know. Her voice came out small, and she hated it. I don't remember anything. I woke up 3 days ago, and you've been touched by something. Garrett cut her off, stepping back like she carried plague. 6 years you were gone. 6 years, and you come back speaking languages you never learned, covered in scars you shouldn't have, and now this. He gestured at the plant. You're not the girl who left. I'm still me. But even as Nick said it, doubt crept in. Was she? How could she know what she was when half her life was missing? You're dangerous, Garrett said flatly. The pack can't harbor something we don't understand. You'll be sold at Greythorn Market tomorrow. The words hit like a fist. Sold? Another pack might have use for you. We don't. He turned his back on her, dismissing her like she was nothing. Get her out of my sight. The guard dragged her to the holding cells beneath the pack house, and Nix didn't fight. What was the point? She was broken, unwanted, a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. She spent the night on cold stone, staring at the ceiling and trying not to think about what it meant to be sold like livestock. The auction house stank of sweat and fear. Nix stood on the platform with iron cuffs around her wrists, her bare feet cold against splintered wood. Around her, wolves were paraded and bid on like cattle. A young male went for 30 silver. An older female, skilled in weaving, went for 50. When Nix's turn came, the auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowd. Lot 17, female, age 22, Omega, no cent. He paused, and Nix saw the shift in the crowd's interest. Scentless meant broken, worthless. Found 3 days ago after 6 years missing. Literate. Has demonstrated minor earth magic. His tone suggested this was a warning, not a feature. Possibly witch-touched. Bidding starts at 10 silver. Silence. Nyx's throat tightened. Even 10 silver was too much for a broken omega. 5 silver, someone called from the back, voice laced with contempt. 3, another countered, and laughter rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer's face reddened. This is a living wolf, not garbage. 10 silver minimum or 500 gold. The voice cut through the noise like a blade, and the entire auction house went silent. Nyx's head snapped up. 2 men stood at the edge of the crowd, and the sea of wolves parted around them like they carried plague. No, like they carried death. Twins. Both tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of fluid grace that marked apex predators. But where one was ice, the other was fire. The one who'd spoken, dark hair, cold gray eyes, expression carved from granite, stepped forward with the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. Alpha. Every line of his body screamed it. The other twin had the same sharp features, the same predatory build, but his eyes were different. Darker, wilder. His gaze locked on Nyx, and she felt the weight of it like a physical touch. 500 gold, the first twin repeated, his voice flat and utterly controlled. Do we have a deal, or do I need to repeat myself? The auctioneer stammered. That's 50 times. I'm aware of the math. The twins' tone could have frozen fire. Yes or no? Sold. The auctioneer's gavel came down so hard it cracked the wood. Nyx's breath snagged in her throat. 500 gold. For her. For a broken, scentless omega with witch blood and missing memories. Why? The crowd murmured. Wolves whispering behind hands and shooting her looks that ranged from shock to pity. The twins ignored them all, moving through the press of bodies like sharks through water. When they reached the platform, the cold one gestured sharply. Release her! The auctioneer fumbled with the cuff keys, hands shaking. The moment the iron fell away, Nyx's wrists ached with phantom pressure. She rubbed at the red marks, unable to look away from the twins. Up close, they were devastating, both carved from the same brutal beauty, all hard angles and controlled power. But the cold one studied her like she was a problem to solve, while the other looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. You'll come with us now, the cold one said, and it wasn't a request. And you'll do exactly as we say. Nyx's spine stiffened. She'd been bought, not broken. Who are you? Darius. He nodded to his twin. And Riker, you're in Blackwater Crossing territory now. Our territory. The name rang a distant bell, but Nyx couldn't place it. She focused on staying upright, on not letting them see how badly her knees wanted to buckle. Why did you pay so much for me? Because you're exactly what we've been looking for, Darius said, and something in his tone made her skin prickle. Riker finally spoke, his voice rougher than his brother's, edged with something she couldn't name. You've been missing for 6 years. We need to know where you were. Ice slid down Nyx's spine. I don't remember. Then we'll help you remember. Darius turned and started toward the exit, clearly expecting her to follow. Nyx didn't move. And if I don't want your help? Riker stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the pine and smoke scent that clung to his skin. His voice dropped, quiet enough that only she could hear. Then you'll die in a ditch somewhere when whoever took you comes back to finish the job. Is that what you want? Her breath caught. What are you talking about? 47 wolves have disappeared over the last 6 years, Darius said without turning around. You're the first to come back, which means someone let you go, and people don't let go of assets unless they're broken or useless. He glanced back, and his gray eyes were merciless. So which are you? Nyx wanted to argue, wanted to run, but where would she go? Her pack had thrown her away. She had no money, no allies, and 6 years of her life were just gone. And these men, these alphas who'd paid a fortune for her, knew something about what had happened to her. She needed answers more than she needed pride. Fine, she said, forcing the word past the tightness in her throat. I'll go with you. Riker's expression shifted, something almost like relief flickering across his face, before it vanished behind a careful mask. Darius just nodded once, sharp and final. Good, let's go. As they led her out of the auction house and into the blinding afternoon sun, Nix caught one last glimpse of the crowd. Wolves staring after her with expressions ranging from pity to envy to fear. She turned away and followed the twins into the unknown, her heart a frantic rhythm beneath her ribs. Behind her, the auctioneer was already calling for the next lot. Ahead of her, Darius and Riker walked in perfect sync, two halves of something dangerous and whole. And Nix couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into a trap of her own making. The journey into the mountains was brutal. Nix's feet were bare, her thin dress meant for an auction block, not a climb through rocky terrain that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. The twins set a punishing pace, and she refused to ask them to slow down, refused to show weakness to men who'd bought her like property. Pride was all she had left. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thick and heavy. Sweat slicked her skin, and her calves screamed with each step over jagged stone. Darius led the way, his stride unwavering, while Riker brought up the rear. She could feel his gaze on her back, a constant weight that made her spine prickle. Neither of them spoke. The silence pressed down like the heat, suffocating. By midday, Nix's vision was starting to blur at the edges. Her mouth felt like sand, her head light. She stumbled over a root she should have seen, caught herself on a tree trunk, and tasted copper where she'd bitten her tongue. Riker was beside her before she could blink. "You need water," he said, and his voice was closer to human than it had been at the auction. Less edge, more concern. "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. His hand closed around her elbow, steadying her, and the touch sent a jolt through her system. Heat. Solid and real and so overwhelming she forgot to breathe for a second. His scent wrapped around her, pine and smoke and something darker, wilder, and her pulse kicked up for reasons that had nothing to do with exhaustion. "You're not fine." Riker pulled a canteen from his pack and held it out. "Drink." Nix wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she didn't need anything from them, but her body betrayed her. Reaching for the water with shaking hands. The first sip was heaven. The second made her realize how close to collapse she'd been. "Slowly," Riker warned, and his fingers brushed hers as he adjusted her grip on the canteen. That touch again. Electric. Wrong. She pulled back like she'd been burned. Riker's expression shuddered, something unreadable flickering behind his dark eyes before he turned away. "We're stopping for 10 minutes. Don't waste it." Darius had already moved ahead, scanning the tree line with the focused intensity of a wolf who expected trouble. Nix sank onto a fallen log and tried to ignore the way Riker positioned himself between her and the forest, his shoulders tense, protecting her, or guarding her. She couldn't tell which. The attack came without warning. One moment, Nix was catching her breath. The next, the air filled with snarls, and the forest exploded with movement. Rogues. 4 of them, lean and scarred and moving with the kind of desperate violence that came from having nothing left to lose. They hit fast, coordinating like a pack that had hunted together before. Darius shifted mid-lunge, bones cracking and reforming in the space between heartbeats. His wolf was massive, silver gray and brutal, teeth bared as he met the first rogue head-on. Blood sprayed. The rogue's shriek cut off with a wet crunch. Riker moved like liquid death, no wasted motion, as he drove his fist into another rogue's throat and followed through with an elbow that shattered bone. He didn't shift, didn't need to. His human form was weapon enough. Nix scrambled backward, heart slamming against her ribs. She'd never seen violence like this. Couldn't look away from the savage efficiency of it. A rogue broke past Darius's guard, eyes locked on her with predatory focus. She was prey. She understood that in the lizard part of her brain that screamed at her to run. But there was nowhere to run. The rogue lunged, claws extended, and Nyx's hands came up instinctively, not to block. Warmth exploded through her palms, and the earth answered. Vines erupted from the soil, thick and thorned and moving like living serpents. They wrapped around the rogue's legs, yanking him down mid-leap. He hit the ground hard enough to crack ribs, and the vines didn't stop. They climbed higher, tightening, thorns sinking into flesh. The rogue's scream was animal and raw. Nyx stared at her hands, at the green light fading from her skin, and couldn't process what she'd just done. Movement in her peripheral vision. Another rogue, this one targeting Riker from behind, while he grappled with a different attacker. "Behind you!" Nyx's shout came too late. The rogue's claws were already descending toward Riker's exposed back, aimed for the spine. The vines moved before Nyx consciously commanded them. They shot across the clearing like spears, wrapping around the rogue's arm and yanking him sideways. His claws missed Riker by inches, scoring the air where his neck had been. Riker spun, eyes widening as he registered what had almost happened, what hadn't happened because of her. He finished the rogue with brutal efficiency, then turned to stare at Nyx. She stared back, breathing hard, her hands still glowing faintly green. Darius shifted back to human form, blood streaking his chest. His gray eyes locked on the vines still writhing around the dying rogues. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know." Nyx's voice shook. I don't remember learning this." "Empathic mimicry," Darius said, and his tone had gone clinical. Cold. "You absorbed someone's earth magic, probably during your time with whoever took you." The words hit like stones. "I can do that? Just take people's abilities?" "Apparently." Darius moved closer, studying her like she was a specimen under glass. "That's rare. Extremely rare. Maybe 1 in 10,000 wolves." Riker was still staring at her, something raw and unguarded in his expression. "You saved my life." Nyx didn't know what to say to that. The vines I didn't think, they just moved. "Instinct," Riker said quietly. "You protected me on instinct." Something in his voice made her chest tighten, like he hadn't expected that, like the idea of someone protecting him was foreign. Darius's expression hardened. "We need to move. More rogues could be in the area, and you just announced our position with a magical light show." He was right. Nyx could still feel the residual warmth in her palms, see the faint glow fading from her skin. Whoever had taught her this, whoever she'd been with for 6 years, they'd made her into something dangerous. The thought terrified her. Riker stepped closer, and before Nyx could react, he'd stripped off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body heat, carrying his scent so strongly it made her dizzy. "You're shaking," he said, and his voice had gone rough again. "And you can't walk barefoot anymore, not after that." "I'm fine." "You're not." He knelt, and Nyx's breath caught as his hands circled her ankle. "You're bleeding." She looked down. He was right. Cuts from the rocks, shallow but stinging. She hadn't even noticed. Riker's touch was careful, almost gentle, as he examined her feet. His thumb brushed the arch of her foot, and heat shot up her leg. She jerked back, pulse racing. "Don't," she managed. His eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. "I'm trying to help you." "I don't need help." "Yes," Riker said quietly, "you do." Before she could argue, he stood and turned to Darius. "She can't walk like this. We're still 3 hours from Blackwater." Darius's jaw tightened. "Then she'll have to manage—" "I'll carry her." The offer hung in the air between them. Nyx's pride screamed at her to refuse, but her feet were screaming louder, and the look on Riker's face, like he was daring his brother to argue, made something in her chest twist. Darius stared at Riker for a long moment, some unspoken conversation passing between them. Finally, he nodded once, sharp. Fine, but we don't stop again until we reach the border. Riker moved before Nix could protest, scooping her up like she weighed nothing. One arm under her knees, the other around her back, and suddenly she was pressed against his chest, surrounded by his heat and scent. I can walk, she said, but her voice came out breathless. No, Riker said, already moving. You can't. Being carried was worse than walking. Every step he took jostled her against him, made her hyper-aware of the solid muscle beneath his shirt, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her side. His scent was everywhere, overwhelming her senses until she couldn't think past it. She tried to focus on anything else. The trees, the sky, Darius's rigid posture ahead of them. But Riker's arms were steady around her, and despite everything, despite being bought and dragged into the mountains and attacked by rogues, she felt safe. That terrified her more than the magic had. They walked in silence for what felt like hours. Nix's eyes grew heavy, exhaustion finally catching up to her. She fought it, but Riker's warmth was a sedative, and his arms never wavered. Sleep, he said quietly. I've got you. She shouldn't trust him, shouldn't trust either of them, but her body betrayed her, and her eyes slipped closed. Just before she drifted off, she heard Darius speak, voice low enough he probably thought she couldn't hear. She's exactly what we need. And Riker's response, even quieter, she's more than that. Nix's last conscious thought was wondering what he meant. Then sleep pulled her under, and she dreamed of vines and blood and gray eyes that saw through her like glass. Nix woke to the sound of steel on steel. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed beneath her was soft, the blankets heavy and warm. Sunlight streamed through a window cut into stone. Stone walls, stone floor, everything cold and gray and unfamiliar. Then memory crashed back. The auction, the twins, the attack. Riker carrying her through the mountains until exhaustion had dragged her under. She sat up, wincing as her feet protested. Someone had bandaged them while she slept, the white cloth stark against her skin. The room was sparse, bed, chair, small table, but clean. A door stood slightly ajar, and through it came the clash of weapons and the low rumble of voices. Nix pushed the blankets aside and stood. Her legs wobbled but held. The dress she'd worn to the auction was gone, replaced with simple pants and a shirt that were too large, clearly borrowed. They carried a faint scent. Pine and smoke. Riker's clothes. Heat crept up her neck. She pushed it down and moved to the door. The room opened onto a stone corridor that led to a wider space, some kind of common area carved into the mountain itself. Through an archway, she could see an open courtyard where wolves sparred in pairs, their movements brutal and efficient. No wasted motion, no mercy in their strikes. This wasn't a pack, it was an army. You're awake, Nix spun. Darius stood in the corridor behind her, silent as a ghost. He'd changed clothes, the blood from the rogue attack gone, but his expression was the same. Cold. Assessing. How long was I asleep? Her voice came out rough. 18 hours. He moved past her into the common area, clearly expecting her to follow. You were exhausted. Riker said you didn't wake even when we cleaned your wounds. The idea of them, of Riker, touching her while she slept, made her skin prickle. Where is he? Training. Darius gestured toward the courtyard. This is Blackwater Crossing. Our pack. Pack felt like the wrong word. The wolves in the courtyard moved with military precision, and the few who glanced their way looked at Darius with something closer to fear than respect. Sit. Darius pointed to a long wooden table. We need to talk. Nix's instinct was to refuse, but her stomach chose that moment to growl. A plate appeared. Bread, cheese, dried meat. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the food was in front of her. She ate while Darius watched, his gray eyes never leaving her face. "You saved Riker's life yesterday," he said finally. Nick swallowed. The vines just happened. Nothing just happens. You have empathic mimicry. That means at some point during the 6 years you were missing, you were in prolonged contact with someone who had earth magic. You absorbed their ability. He leaned forward. Who was it? I don't know. Frustration bled into her voice. I don't remember anything. Just waking up in the forest 3 days ago. Try harder. You think I'm not trying? The words came out sharper than she intended. You think I want to have 6 years of my life just gone? I've tried. Every time I reach for those memories, it's like hitting a wall made of broken glass. Something flickered in Darius's expression, almost like recognition. A mental block. Someone put one in your mind. Ice slid down her spine. What? Whoever took you didn't want you remembering, so they made sure you couldn't. His tone was clinical, like they were discussing the weather. It's forbidden magic, blood magic, the kind that requires a skilled practitioner and a lot of pain. Nix's hands started shaking. She set down the bread before she dropped it. Why would someone do that? Because you saw something they didn't want you to see, or because they trained you to do something they didn't want you to remember doing. Darius's eyes were merciless. Either way, you're a liability to whoever held you, which means they'll come for you eventually, to reclaim you or eliminate you. The room felt too small suddenly, too cold. Then why did you bring me here? Why pay 500 gold for a liability? Because 47 wolves have disappeared over 6 years in the same pattern, young, vulnerable, taken near rogue attack sites. Darius stood, looming over her. You're the first to come back, which means you can tell us where the others are. Understanding crashed through her. You think I can lead you to them? I know you can, once we break through that mental block. And if we can't? His expression didn't change. Then you're useless to us. The words hit like a slap. Nix pushed away from the table, anger flaring hot in her chest. So I'm just a tool to you, something to be used. You were always going to be used by someone, Darius said flatly. At least here, you'll be fed and protected while we figure out what you know. How generous. The sarcasm tasted bitter. It is generous. His voice hardened. You're scentless, broken, and touched by forbidden magic. Any other pack would have killed you on sight. We're giving you a chance. A chance to be your prisoner. A chance to help save 46 other wolves who are still out there, still being held by whoever took you. Darius moved closer, and Nix's back hit the wall. Unless you don't care what happens to them. Guilt twisted in her gut. He was right, and she hated it, hated him for being right. I'll try, she said through gritted teeth, but I can't promise. You'll do more than try. Darius's hand came up, fingers brushing her temple. The touch was cold, impersonal. We'll start memory recovery sessions tomorrow. They won't be pleasant. Nix jerked away from his hand. Don't touch me. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You don't give orders here, and you don't own me. Actually, Darius said quietly, I do. I paid 500 gold for you. That makes you mine until I decide otherwise. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they ignited rage so fierce it burned through the fear. I'm not property. Then prove you're worth more than what I paid. He stepped back, dismissing her like she was nothing. Someone will show you around. Stay within the compound. Try to leave, and you'll be brought back, forcibly, if necessary. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her shaking with anger and something else, something that felt dangerously close to despair. Nick stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, trying to force down the emotion clawing up her throat. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't give them the satisfaction. A throat cleared behind her. She turned to find a young woman watching her, expression carefully neutral. Dark hair, sharp features, a scar running from her left eye to her jaw. "I'm Vera," the woman said. "Darius asked me to show you the compound." "He ordered you to babysit me, you mean?" Vera's lips twitched, almost a smile. "That too. Come on. Might as well see what kind of cage you're in." The tour was brief and depressing. The compound was carved into the mountain, all stone and shadows. Sleeping quarters, training yards, an armory that made Nix's stomach turn. Everywhere she looked, wolves watched her with suspicion or outright hostility. "They don't like outsiders," Vera explained as they walked. "Especially ones brought in by the alphas." "Why?" "Because everyone here has lost something to rogues. Family, packs, homes." Vera's expression hardened. "They don't trust easy, and you, no offense, reek of trouble. I didn't ask to be here. Neither did most of us." Vera stopped outside a training yard, where two wolves were sparring with brutal efficiency. "But here we are." One of the fighters was Riker. Nix recognized him instantly, even mid-strike. He moved like violence made flesh, every motion controlled and devastating. His opponent was larger, but Riker flowed around the attacks like water, exploiting openings before they fully formed. He was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "He's been like that since you arrived," Vera said quietly, pushing harder, training longer. "Why?" Vera gave her a long look. "You really don't know?" Before Nix could ask what that meant, Riker's gaze found hers across the yard. The distraction cost him. His opponent's fist connected with his jaw, snapping his head back. Riker didn't react, just turned back to his opponent and dropped him with a sweep that was more punishing than necessary. "Break!" he called, voice rough. Then he was walking toward them, and Nix's pulse kicked up for reasons she didn't want to examine. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Sweat dampened his shirt, and there was blood on his knuckles. Not his own. "You're awake," he said. "Apparently." His jaw tightened. "Darius talked to you. If you can call threats and insults talking, then yes." Something dark crossed Riker's expression. "What did he say?" "That I'm a tool, a liability, property he bought." The words tasted like ash. Riker's hands curled into fists. "You're not property. Tell your brother that. I will." The promise in his voice was dangerous. "Are you all right?" The question surprised her. "Why do you care?" He stared at her for a long moment, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "I don't know." The honesty stole her breath. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the compound gates. Voices raised in anger, the sharp scent of fear. Riker's head snapped toward the noise, body going tense. "Stay here." He was gone before Nix could argue, moving with that same lethal grace toward the gathering crowd. Vera grabbed her arm. "Come on! If there's trouble, you don't want to be—" A scream cut through the air, high and terrified. Then another voice, cold and familiar. "The Omega is a spy. She brought the rogues to us." Nix's blood turned to ice. Someone had started a rumor, and from the looks on the surrounding faces, they believed it. The crowd parted like a wound, and Nix saw the source of the accusation. A male wolf, older, with scars crisscrossing his arms and hatred burning in his eyes. He held a piece of torn fabric, gray and stained with what looked like blood. "Found this at the attack site. Same scent as her." He thrust the fabric toward where Nix stood frozen beside Vera. She marked the trail for the rogues to follow. Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Suspicious glances turned her way, and Nix felt the weight of their judgment like physical blows. "That's insane," she started, but her voice was drowned out by another wolf stepping forward. My brother died in a rogue attack 2 months ago, a woman snarled. Now she shows up and suddenly we're attacked again? It's too convenient. She's probably still working with them. Witch blood Omega. Enough. Riker's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He stood between Nix and the crowd, shoulders squared, radiating enough controlled violence that the nearest wolves actually stepped back. You're accusing her based on fabric and paranoia. We're accusing her based on pattern. The scarred male didn't back down. Every pack she's touched has been hit by rogues. Her original pack sold her off for a reason. They sold her because they're cowards, Riker said flatly, or because they knew what she was. The male's eyes narrowed. You paid 500 gold for a scentless Omega who can't remember 6 years of her life. What does that tell you? Darius appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. He didn't move to defend her, didn't speak, just watched with those cold gray eyes, and Nix's stomach dropped. He was waiting, judging her reaction, seeing if the accusation held weight. I didn't... Nix's voice shook, and she hated it. I don't even know where I was. How could I lead anyone here? Maybe you don't have to know. The scarred male moved closer, and Vera shifted to block him. Maybe whoever took you put something in you. A tracking spell, a scent marker, something that calls rogues like flies to rot. The crowd's energy shifted, fear mixing with anger. Nix felt it building, a pressure that made her skin crawl. We should lock her up, someone called from the back. Or send her away before she gets us all killed. She saved Riker's life yesterday, Vera said sharply. Or did you all conveniently forget that part? Convenient timing, the scarred male shot back. Stage an attack, play hero, earn trust. Classic infiltration. Nix's hands clenched into fists. The warmth was building in her palms again, responding to her anger and fear. The vines wanted to come. She could feel the earth beneath the stone, hungry and waiting. No. She forced the magic down, proving their witch blood accusations wouldn't help. Riker's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Take it back, Marcus. Or what? Marcus stepped closer, challenging. You'll defend a stranger over your own pack? I'll defend someone who's done nothing wrong over someone spreading poison. Riker's voice dropped, dangerous and low. Last chance. Walk away. The tension crackled like lightning about to strike. Nix could see wolves picking sides, hands drifting toward weapons. This was going to turn violent, and it would be her fault. Stop. Darius's voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. The crowd stilled. Marcus, you have concerns, valid ones, so we'll investigate. Relief flickered across Marcus's face. Nix's chest tightened. Nix will be confined to secure quarters until we determine if there's any merit to these accusations, Darius continued. Riker and I will examine the attack site, track the scent, and verify her story. Confine her where? Marcus demanded. The old watch post, the one built into the cliff face. Darius's gaze flicked to Nix, cold and assessing. It's defensible. One entrance. If rogues do come for her, we'll know. If rogues came for her, not if she called them. The distinction was important, but Nix wasn't sure if Darius believed it or was just playing politics. How long? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. As long as it takes. Darius turned to Riker. Get her settled. I'll organize the investigation. Riker looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded once, sharp. He moved to Nix's side, his hand hovering near her elbow without quite touching. Come on. She wanted to refuse, wanted to scream that this was insane, that she was being punished for something she didn't do. But the crowd was still watching with hostile eyes, and pride wouldn't protect her from their fear. She followed Riker through the compound, Vera trailing behind them. The walk was silent and tense. Wolves stepping aside but tracking them with suspicious stares. The watchpost was exactly what it sounded like, a room carved into the cliff face with a single narrow entrance and a window overlooking the valley below. Defensible, isolated, a prison. "I'll bring you food," Vera said quietly, "and anything else you need. What I need is to not be locked up for something I didn't do." Nix's voice cracked despite her best efforts. Vera's expression softened. "I know, but Marcus has influence, and fear makes people stupid. Just give Darius time to prove you're not a threat." She left before Nix could respond, footsteps echoing down the stone corridor. Nix turned to find Riker still standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You should go too. Don't want people thinking you're fraternizing with the enemy." "You're not the enemy." He stepped inside, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. "And I don't care what people think. Your brother does." Darius cares about pack stability, about keeping everyone calm until the truth comes out. Riker moved to the window, staring out at the mountains. "He doesn't actually think you're a spy. Could have fooled me. He's calculating. It's how he thinks." Riker's jaw tightened. "I'm not like him." "No," Nix said quietly. "You're not." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. "I meant what I said. You saved my life. I don't forget that. I didn't have a choice. The vines just... You had a choice." He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "You could have run, could have let the rogue kill me and used the chaos to escape, but you didn't." Nix's pulse was racing now, her body hyper-aware of how little space remained between them. "Maybe I'm just a terrible spy." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Maybe." The air felt thick, charged with something she didn't have a name for. Riker's scent was everywhere. Pine and smoke, and something darker that made her head spin. She should step back, put distance between them. She didn't move. "Why did you really buy me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. 500 gold, that's... No one pays that much for a broken Omega." "You're not broken." His voice had gone rough. "And we need you." "For what?" He hesitated, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Whatever he was about to say, it cost him. 6 years ago, our pack was destroyed. Rogues attacked in the night, killed our parents, our sister, 23 others, burned everything. Nix's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. We've been hunting whoever orchestrated it ever since, following patterns, tracking disappearances." His hands curled into fists. 47 wolves taken over 6 years. You're the first to come back, which means I might know where the others are. Understanding crashed through her. Or who took them? Yes, but I don't remember. Not yet. Riker's gaze dropped to her hands. "But that magic you used yesterday, empathic mimicry, it's rare. Whoever trained you, whoever you absorbed that ability from, they're connected to this, to the disappearances, to our family's deaths." The weight of it settled over her like a shroud. What if I can't remember? What if the mental block never breaks? "It will." He said it with absolute certainty. "We'll find a way." "And if we don't?" His expression hardened. "Then we find another way to track them." "Darius said I'd be useless if I can't remember." "Darius says a lot of things." Riker stepped closer, so close she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "You're not useless. You're..." He stopped, jaw working like he was fighting words he didn't want to say. "I'm what?" Nix whispered. His hand came up, fingers brushing her jawline so lightly it might have been imagined. The touch sent electricity racing down her spine. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, and her breath stuttered. "Dangerous," he said finally, voice low and rough. "To me, to this pack, to yourself." Then why are you still here? His eyes darkened. Because I can't seem to stay away. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Nix's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. The warmth of his palm against her face was overwhelming, making it impossible to think past the sensation of his skin on hers. She should push him away. Should remember that he'd bought her, that she was his prisoner, that trusting him was dangerous. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. Riker's breath caught. His other hand came up, fingers threading into her hair, and the gentleness of it broke something in her chest. If I'm dangerous, she managed, you should go. I know. But he didn't move. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and the intimacy of it stole her breath. I should walk away. Should lock this door and leave you here until Darius clears your name. Why don't you? His thumb brushed her lower lip, and heat pooled low in her belly. Because for 6 years I haven't felt anything, nothing but rage and emptiness, and then you... His voice cracked. You make me feel everything, and I don't know if I want to thank you or hate you for it. Nix's hands had somehow found their way to his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. She could feel his heartbeat beneath her palms, racing as fast as hers. Riker. A sharp knock on the doorframe shattered the moment. They sprang apart like they'd been burned. Darius stood in the entrance, his expression carved from ice. If he'd noticed how close they'd been standing, he gave no indication. The investigation starts now, he said flatly. Riker, you're with me. Riker's hands clenched into fists, but he nodded. He didn't look at Nix as he moved toward the door. Just before he crossed the threshold, he stopped. You'll be safe here. I'll make sure of it. Then he was gone, following Darius into the corridor. The door closed with a hollow thud, and Nix heard the unmistakable sound of a lock sliding into place. She was alone in a stone room, accused of treason, locked away from a pack that wanted her dead. And all she could think about was the ghost of Riker's touch on her skin. The first memory fragment came 3 days into her confinement. Nix had been staring at the stone ceiling, counting cracks to keep from losing her mind, when pain lanced through her skull like someone driving nails into her brain. She gasped, vision whiting out, and suddenly she wasn't in the watch post anymore. She was somewhere dark, cold, stone walls pressed close, different from Blackwater, but equally unforgiving. A voice echoed through the space, calm and clinical. Again. Mimic my voice exactly. Her own voice, younger, terrified, responded. I can't. It hurts. Pain is irrelevant. Again. The memory shattered like glass, and Nix found herself on her knees, gasping for air. Her hands were pressed against the cold floor, and she couldn't remember falling, training. Someone had been training her, forcing her to use the empathic mimicry over and over until... The door opened. Nix looked up to find Vera standing there with a tray of food, concern etched across her scarred face. You all right? I heard... She set the tray down and crouched beside Nix. What happened? I remembered something. Nix's voice came out shaky. Just a fragment. Someone was teaching me to mimic voices. Vera's expression darkened. Teaching or forcing? Forcing. The word tasted like truth. I was scared. It hurt. But they made me do it anyway. That's blood magic conditioning, the kind that breaks your mind down and rebuilds it. Vera helped her to the bed, steadying her when she swayed. If the memories are starting to break through, it means the block is weakening. That's good. Doesn't feel good. Nix pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to push back the residual pain. Feels like my skull is cracking open. It might get worse before it gets better. Memory recovery is... Vera stopped, her expression shifting to something guarded. Someone's coming. She was gone before Nix could ask who, slipping out the door with practiced ease. Moments later, footsteps echoed in the corridor. heavier than Vera's, deliberately loud, like whoever approached wanted to be heard. An older woman stepped into the room, her silver hair pulled back severely, her eyes sharp and assessing. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had survived more battles than it should have. "I'm Mora," she said without preamble. "Former pack healer before the massacre. Now, I mostly keep these idiots from killing themselves during training." Her gaze swept over Nyx, clinical and thorough. "You're the one causing all the trouble." "I didn't ask to cause trouble." "No one ever does." Mora pulled the room's single chair closer to the bed and sat with a grunt. "But trouble finds you anyway. Story of every wolf I've ever met." Nyx waited, uncertain what this woman wanted. "I knew the twins' mother," Mora said finally. "Delivered both boys myself. Watched them grow up. Watched them lose everything." Her expression hardened. "So, I'm going to ask you something, and I want the truth. Did you have anything to do with the rogue attacks?" "No." The answer came immediately, certain. "I don't even know where I was for 6 years. How could I plan attacks I can't remember?" "Memory can lie, feelings don't." Mora leaned forward. "When you think about rogues, about violence, about hurting people, what do you feel?" Nyx closed her eyes, reaching inward. Terror, confusion. But underneath that, guilt. "Guilt for what?" "I don't know. It's just there. Like I did something terrible. But I can't remember what." Her hands started shaking. "What if they're right? What if I did help the rogues and just don't remember?" "Then it wasn't your choice." Mora's voice was firm. "Blood magic conditioning strips away choice. Makes you a puppet. If you hurt people while under that control, the guilt belongs to whoever held the strings, not you." The words should have been comforting. They weren't. "That doesn't bring back the people who died." "No," Mora agreed quietly. "It doesn't. But punishing yourself for something you couldn't control doesn't honor them either." She stood, moving to the window. "The twins are investigating your claims. Marcus is furious about it, thinks Darius is being soft. Half the pack agrees with him. And the other half? Reserving judgment, waiting to see what the evidence says." Mora turned back to her. "Riker came to me yesterday. Asked me to check on you. Make sure you were—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Not falling apart." Heat crept up Nyx's neck. "He said that?" "He said, make sure she's surviving. I'm translating." A ghost of a smile touched Mora's lips. "That boy hasn't cared about anyone's survival in 6 years. Not even his own. Then you show up and suddenly he's asking questions, checking in, training like a man possessed. I don't understand what you're implying. Don't you?" Mora's gaze was knowing. "He watches you like you're the only light in his darkness. And you look at him the same way." "I barely know him." "You saved his life. He carried you through the mountains. You're living in a stone box because he can't risk the pack tearing you apart." Mora moved to the door. Knowing someone and understanding them aren't the same thing. Sometimes the heart figures things out faster than the head. She left before Nyx could form a response. The second memory came that night. Nyx was half asleep when the pain hit, sharper this time, dragging her under before she could brace for it. A different room. Warmer. She was older in this memory, maybe 17 or 18. Her hands were pressed against another person's arm. A woman with earth magic. She could feel it thrumming through the contact. "Good," that same clinical voice said from somewhere behind her. "You're absorbing it faster now. Soon you won't need contact at all, just proximity." "What do you want me to do with it?" Her younger self's voice was hollow, empty, like something vital had been carved out and discarded. "Whatever I tell you to do." The memory released her violently. Nyx rolled to her side and vomited into the chamber pot someone had left beside the bed. Her whole body shook, sweat soaking through her borrowed shirt. That voice. She knew that voice. It was familiar in a way that made her skin crawl, but every time she tried to grasp the memory of who it belonged to, pain drove her back. The door crashed open. Riker filled the entrance, his hair disheveled like he'd been running. His eyes found her crumpled on the bed, and something raw crossed his face. Vera said she heard. He was across the room before Nix could blink, his hands hovering over her like he didn't know if touching her would help or hurt. What happened? Another memory. Her voice came out wrecked, stronger this time. What did you see? She told him, watching his expression darken with each word. When she finished, his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Someone was training you, building you into a weapon. His hands finally settled on her shoulders, steadying her. This is what Darius needs to hear. Evidence that you were a victim, not a conspirator. What if I was both? The question had been eating at her since the first memory. What if they trained me and then I chose to help them? You didn't choose. Riker's voice was fierce. Choice requires free will. Blood magic conditioning removes that. Mora said the same thing. Mora's right. His thumbs traced small circles on her shoulders, and Nix wasn't sure he realized he was doing it. You're remembering. That's good. It means we're getting closer to the truth. The truth might be worse than the accusations. Then we'll deal with it. His eyes met hers, dark and intense. Together. The word settled over her like a promise. Together. Like she wasn't alone in this. Like he meant to stand beside her, regardless of what the memories revealed. Why? The question slipped out. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Riker's expression shifted, something vulnerable bleeding through his usual control. I told you. You make me feel things I haven't felt in years. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His hands slid from her shoulders, but he didn't move away. For 6 years, I've been numb, walking through days like a ghost, fighting, training, hunting. All of it felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life. His voice dropped. Then you show up and suddenly everything's sharp again. The anger, the fear, the... He stopped, jaw working. The what? The hope. The admission seemed to cost him. I'd forgotten what hope felt like. Thought I'd killed it the night I watched my family die. Nix's chest tightened. Riker, you're dangerous to me, he continued, his gaze never leaving hers. Because if I let myself care about you and then lose you... His hands curled into fists. I don't think I'd survive it a second time. The raw honesty stole her breath. She reached out before she could think better of it, her fingers curling around his clenched fist. Then don't lose me. His eyes darkened. I'm trying, but Marcus is pushing for exile. Says keeping you here is too risky. What does Darius think? Darius thinks Marcus has a point. Riker's voice went hard. We found evidence at the attack site. A scent marker buried in the soil. Blood magic. It was designed to draw rogues to whoever carried the matching signature. Horror crawled up Nix's spine. And I have the matching signature. Yes. His hand turned in hers, fingers threading through hers. The gesture felt protective and desperate in equal measure. But that doesn't mean you placed it. Someone could have marked you without your knowledge. Used you as bait. Or I could have done it myself while under conditioning. We'll prove you didn't. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. Darius is working on breaking the marker. If we can trace it back to whoever created it... Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Multiple sets, moving fast. Riker tensed, his free hand going to the knife at his belt. Darius appeared in the doorway, his expression carved from ice. Behind him stood Marcus and 3 other wolves, all armed. We need to talk, Darius said, his gaze flicking between Nick's and Riker's joined hands. Now. Riker didn't let go of her. About what? About the fact that 2 more rogues were spotted near the eastern border. Darius's voice was flat. Carrying scent markers identical to the one we found. And all 3 markers... His eyes locked on Nick's. Lead here. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus stepped forward, his expression triumphant and vicious. Still think she's innocent? Riker's hand tightened around Nix's, but he didn't answer. Because they both knew the evidence was damning, and this time there was nowhere left to run. The council room was carved from the same unforgiving stone as the rest of Blackwater, but it felt colder, more hostile. Nix sat in a chair at the center, surrounded by wolves who looked at her like she was a disease they needed to cut out before it spread. Marcus stood at the front, arms crossed, radiating satisfaction. 3 scent markers, all pointing to her, all designed to draw rogues directly to our territory. He turned to address the gathered pack. How much more evidence do we need? Evidence that she placed them, Riker shot back. He stood beside Nix's chair, close enough that his leg brushed her shoulder. A statement. Anyone could have marked her, used her as a beacon without her knowledge. Convenient theory, Marcus sneered, except the markers are fresh, placed within the last 2 weeks. She's only been back for 3 days, which means someone else placed them and knew she'd be coming through our territory. Darius's voice cut through the argument like a blade. He stood at the head of the room, expression unreadable. The timing is too precise. Someone's orchestrating this. Or she's exactly what she appears to be, a weapon sent to destroy us from the inside. Marcus's gaze swept the room. We vote, exile or execution. Those are the only options that keep the pack safe. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Nix felt the weight of their fear and anger pressing down on her. She wanted to defend herself, to scream that she was innocent, but what evidence did she have? Fragments of memories that proved nothing except that someone had broken her mind and rebuilt it. We don't vote on someone's life based on fear, Riker said, his voice dangerously quiet. We vote on it based on survival, Marcus countered. Your emotions are clouding your judgment. My emotions? Riker's control cracked, rage bleeding through. You want to talk about emotions? You've wanted her dead from the moment she arrived. This isn't about evidence. It's about you needing someone to blame for your brother's death. Marcus's face went red. Don't you dare. Enough. Darius's single word silenced them both. He moved to the center of the room, his gaze sweeping across the gathered wolves. We're not voting tonight. Not until we have conclusive proof one way or another. And how long will that take? Someone called from the back. As long as necessary. Darius's tone left no room for argument. In the meantime, Nix remains confined, under guard, no contact with anyone outside approved visitors. That's not sufficient, Marcus started. It's my decision. Darius's eyes went cold. Unless you're challenging my authority as Alpha. The room went deathly quiet. Challenging an Alpha was a fight to the death or submission. Marcus was strong, but he wasn't stupid. After a tense moment, he lowered his gaze. No challenge, he said through gritted teeth. Good. Darius turned to Riker. Return her to the watchpost. I'll assign guards. Riker's jaw tightened, but he nodded. His hand found Nix's elbow, helping her stand. Her legs felt weak, shock and fear making her unsteady. The walk back to her prison was silent. Wolves stepped aside, but their stares followed, burning into her back. When they finally reached the watchpost, Riker followed her inside and closed the door. The lock didn't engage. You're supposed to lock it, Nix said quietly. I know. He didn't move to leave, just stood there, tension radiating from every line of his body. They want me dead. Marcus wants you dead. The others are just scared. Riker moved to the window, hands braced against the stone. Fear makes people cruel. And what about you? Nix moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Are you scared? He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. Terrified. Of me? Of losing you? The confession came out rough. Of watching another person, He stopped, jaw working. Of not being able to protect you. Nix closed the distance between them, her hand settling over his heart. She could feel it racing beneath her palm, as fast as her own. You keep protecting me. Why? Because 6 years ago I couldn't protect anyone. His hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his chest. I watched them die. My mother, my father. My sister was 12 years old and I couldn't. His voice cracked. I couldn't save any of them. The pain in his words broke something in her chest. That wasn't your fault. I was there. I survived. That makes it my fault. His other hand came up, fingers threading into her hair. But you're here, alive, and I can still save you. Maybe I don't need saving. Her voice came out breathless. Maybe I just need someone to believe I'm not a monster. You're not. He said it with absolute certainty. Whatever was done to you, whoever used you, that's not who you are. I see you, Nix, the real you. And she's not a monster. Tears burned behind her eyes. You don't know what I might have done. I don't care. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and the intimacy of the gesture stole her breath. I don't care what memories come back. I don't care what Marcus says or what the pack believes. I know you. You can't know me. I don't even know myself. Then I'll know you for both of us. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw, and heat spread through her body like wildfire. Until you remember who you are. Nix's hands had somehow found their way to his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. She was trembling, but not from fear. From the overwhelming sensation of being seen, truly seen. Not as a broken omega or a potential threat, but as someone worth fighting for. Riker, she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. His breath ghosted across her lips, close enough to taste. Tell me to leave. I can't. Tell me you don't feel this. His hand slid down her spine, settling at the small of her back and pulling her flush against him. Tell me I'm imagining it. I can't do that either. Her pulse was thunder in her ears. His control snapped. His mouth found hers, and the kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or careful. It was desperate and hungry, like he was drowning and she was air. His lips moved against hers with barely restrained violence, swallowing the gasp that escaped her throat. Nix kissed him back just as desperately, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair. He tasted like smoke and heat and something uniquely him that made her dizzy. When his tongue traced the seam of her lips, she opened for him without thinking, and the low sound he made vibrated through her entire body. His hands were everywhere, one tangled in her hair, angling her head for deeper access, the other splayed possessively across her lower back, holding her so close there was no space left between them. She could feel every hard plane of his body pressed against her, the controlled strength barely leashed beneath his skin. She'd never been kissed like this, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Like losing her would break him. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Riker's eyes were nearly black. His thumb traced her swollen lower lip, and the gentle touch was a stark contrast to the raw hunger she could see barely contained in his expression. I'm not sorry, he said, voice wrecked. Good. Nix's hands were still in his hair, and she couldn't seem to make herself let go. Don't be. He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less devastating. His lips moved against hers with a reverence that made her chest ache. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard. I can't lose you, he whispered against her mouth. I won't survive it. Then don't let them take me. Her fingers tightened in his hair. Fight for me. I will. The promise was fierce. Even if I have to fight the whole pack. Even if I have to fight Darius. The mention of his brother made reality crash back. Nyx pulled back slightly, her hands sliding down to rest on his chest. He'll never allow this. Us. I don't care what he allows. Riker's hands settled on her hips. Thumbs tracing small circles that made coherent thought difficult. I'm done living half alive, done pretending I don't feel anything. What if the memories come back and she couldn't finish the thought? What if she'd done terrible things? What if she really was the monster everyone feared? Then we deal with it together. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Whatever comes, you're not facing it alone, not anymore. The certainty in his voice made her want to believe, want to trust that maybe she deserved this, deserved him. A knock at the door shattered the moment. They sprang apart as Vera entered carrying a tray of food. Her eyebrows rose as she took in their flushed faces and the obvious tension crackling between them, but she said nothing. Darius sent guards, she said, setting the tray down. They're posted outside, and he wants to see you, Riker. Now. Riker's jaw tightened. He looked at Nyx, conflict warring in his expression. Go, she said quietly. I'll be fine. He hesitated, then moved to the door. Just before he crossed the threshold, he turned back. Lock the door after me. Don't open it for anyone except Vera or me. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Vera moved to the window, her expression thoughtful. That was stupid. I know. Nyx sank onto the bed, her lips still tingling. If Marcus finds out, he won't. He will. Vera turned to face her. Nothing stays secret in a pack this small, and when he does, he'll use it against both of you. Nyx's stomach twisted. Riker said he doesn't care. Riker's emotions are finally working again after 6 years of being numb. That doesn't mean his judgment is. Vera's expression softened slightly. I'm not saying don't care about him. I'm saying be careful. Because if this goes wrong, you're not the only one who'll pay the price. She left before Nyx could respond, locking the door behind her with a hollow click. Nyx lay back on the bed, her fingers touching her lips where Riker's mouth had been. She could still feel the ghost of his touch, still taste him on her tongue. Be careful, Vera had said. But it was too late for careful. She was already falling, and she had no idea if Riker would catch her or if they'd both crash together. Outside, voices rose in argument, the guards changing shift, the pack settling in for the night. And somewhere in the darkness, Nyx knew rogues were circling closer, drawn by markers she couldn't remember placing. To kill her or reclaim her, she didn't know which would be worse. The third memory came like an avalanche. Nyx had been asleep when the pain hit, dragging her under so violently she couldn't even scream. This time the memory didn't fragment. It came in full, crystal clear and devastating. She was 19, 3 years into her captivity, standing in a stone chamber that felt familiar now, the cold seeping into her bones. In front of her stood a figure, face obscured by shadow and something else. Magic. A glamour that made the features blur and shift whenever she tried to focus. But the voice, she knew that voice. You're ready, the figure said, and the clinical tone made her skin crawl. Tonight, you'll complete your first real assignment. Her younger self stood perfectly still, eyes empty. What do you need me to do? There's a pack, Silverbrook territory. The Alpha family has been interfering with my operations. The figure moved closer, and even through the glamour, Nyx could sense the cold calculation. You'll infiltrate during their summer gathering, mimic the voice of their beta, get close to the Alpha's children, and then kill them all. The memory should have ended there. Nyx wanted it to end there, but it kept going, dragging her deeper. She saw herself preparing, absorbing the beta's voice through a recording, practicing the mimicry until it was perfect. Felt the empty compliance that came from having her will stripped away, rebuilt into something that only knew obedience. Then the mission itself, slipping into the gathering, using the beta's voice to call the alpha's children away from the celebration, leading them into the forest where the image shifted. Different location. A pack house carved into a mountain, smaller than Silverbrook, but familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. She knew this place. The memory focused, and Nyx saw herself moving through corridors with practiced silence, mimicking voices, scents, becoming whoever she needed to be to get close to her targets. A woman with kind eyes who looked too young to have adult sons. A man with gray threading through his dark hair. And a girl, 12 years old, with a bright laugh that cut off when Nyx's blade found her throat. No. The glamoured figure appeared again, watching from the shadows. Nyx tried to focus on the face, to see past the magic obscuring it. The glamour wavered just for a second, and she caught a glimpse of gray eyes, cold and calculating, features she'd been staring at for days. The memory released her with such violence that Nyx's head cracked against the stone floor. She lay there, gasping, her entire body shaking as the truth crashed over her in waves. She'd killed them, the twins' family, their mother, their father, their 12-year-old sister. She was the ghost wolf. And the person who'd trained her, who'd sent her to slaughter innocents, who'd controlled her like a puppet for 6 years, was Darius. The door burst open. Nyx looked up through tears and blood. She'd bitten through her lip, to find Mora standing there, eyes wide with alarm. "I heard you fall," Mora said, rushing forward. "What happened?" "I remember." Nyx's voice came out broken. "I remember everything." Mora's expression shifted to something careful, cautious. "What do you remember?" "I killed them, the twins' family. I'm the ghost wolf they've been hunting." The words felt like they were being torn from her throat. "And Darius?" She stopped. Because if Darius was the one who'd made her into a weapon, if he'd orchestrated his own family's death and blamed it on rogues, then telling anyone in this pack was dangerous. They'd either think she was lying to save herself, or Darius would kill her before she could expose him. "Breathe," Mora said firmly, her hands on Nyx's shoulders. "You're in shock. Whatever you remembered, I need to leave." Nyx tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. "I need to get out of here before—" Footsteps in the corridor, multiple sets, moving fast. Mora's expression darkened. "That's not Vera." The door filled with bodies. Darius stood at the front, his face an expressionless mask. Behind him were 2 wolves Nyx didn't recognize, both armed. Riker wasn't with them. "Out," Darius said to Mora, his voice flat. "She's injured," Mora protested. "She needs out, now." Something in his tone made Mora's spine stiffen. She looked at Nyx, conflict clear in her eyes, then slowly stood and left. The door closed behind her with a finality that made Nyx's chest tighten. Darius moved closer, and Nyx forced herself to meet his eyes, those cold, gray eyes she'd just seen in her memory, eyes that had watched her kill his own family without a shred of remorse. "You remembered," Darius said, not a question. Nyx's hands curled into fists against the stone floor. "Yes." "All of it?" "Enough." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I know what I did. I know what you made me do." Something flickered in his expression. Almost like relief. "Then we can stop pretending." The admission hit like a physical blow. Part of her had hoped she was wrong, that the memory was corrupted, that Darius couldn't possibly be. "You killed your own family," Nyx said, her voice shaking with rage and horror. "You used me to murder them." I removed obstacles, Darius corrected, his tone clinical. My parents were weak, sentimental. They would never have allowed me to do what needed to be done. And my sister, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She would have grown up the same way. She was 12 years old. She was a liability. Darius crouched in front of her, and Nyx had to fight not to recoil. You understand that now, don't you? You've seen what I built. The network of weapons, the control over pack territories across 4 states. None of that would have been possible with my family alive. You're insane. I'm practical. He reached out, and Nyx flinched, but his hand just brushed her temple where blood was drying. The mental block was supposed to hold longer, but I suppose the mate bond with Riker accelerated the breakdown. Bonds have a way of breaking through conditioning. Mate bond. The words should have meant something, but Nyx couldn't process them past the horror. Where is Riker? Occupied. I sent him to investigate a rogue sighting on the eastern border. Darius's eyes were merciless. He'll be gone for hours, plenty of time for us to resolve this situation. Fear spiked through her. What situation? You're a failed weapon who's recovered her memories. That makes you a threat I can't afford. Darius stood, gesturing to the 2 wolves behind him. We have 3 options. 1, I kill you now and tell Riker you tried to escape and died in the attempt. He won't believe you. He will, because he wants to believe I'm better than I am. He's been believing it for 6 years. Darius's expression was cold. Option 2, I reactivate your conditioning, wipe your mind clean and rebuild you. The process would be painful, and there's a significant chance you'd die or go insane, but it's possible. Nyx's stomach churned. And option 3, you leave. Tonight. I'll arrange safe passage to the Canadian border. You disappear, never contact Riker again, and I don't hunt you down. He tilted his head. In exchange, you keep my secret. Why would I agree to that? Because if you stay, one of 2 things happens. Darius moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Either I kill you, or you expose me, and I'm forced to activate every weapon I have embedded in this pack. 3 of them are here right now, disguised as reformed rogues. If you reveal what I am, they'll slaughter everyone before you can prove anything. The trap was elegant and devastating. Stay and die, or expose him and watch innocents die, or run and let him win. You're going to kill Riker, Nyx said, the realization hitting like ice water. That's your endgame. Once I'm gone, once he's vulnerable again. I can't kill Riker. Darius's voice held the first hint of genuine emotion, frustration. There's a blood oath, ancient magic our father bound us with. If I kill him or order his death, I die too. Then why? Because I need him broken, numb, controllable. Darius turned back to face her. You woke him up, made him feel again. That makes him dangerous, unpredictable. If you leave, he'll shut down. Go back to being the weapon I've spent 6 years forging. Understanding crashed through her. You've been using him this whole time. Of course. A twin alpha who believes we're hunting our family's killer together is infinitely more useful than one who knows I orchestrated it. Darius's expression was carved from ice. So, what's your choice? Before Nyx could answer, a roar of rage echoed through the corridor. The door exploded inward, torn off its hinges. Riker stood in the entrance, his eyes wild, his entire body vibrating with barely contained violence. Behind him, Mora looked pale and terrified. She told you, Darius said flatly, his gaze cutting to Mora. Damn right I told him, Mora snapped. You think I'd let you murder another innocent? Riker's attention locked on Darius, and Nyx saw the moment everything clicked into place for him. The moment he understood. His expression shattered, raw grief and rage and betrayal warring across his features. Tell me she's lying, Riker said, his voice shaking. Tell me Mora misunderstood. Tell me you're not... I'm not lying, Darius said calmly, and you already know the truth. You've probably known it for years, but refused to let yourself see it. Riker's hands curled into fists. You killed them. our parents, our sister. I removed obstacles. The clinical response broke something in Riker. He moved with lethal speed, closing the distance between them. His fist connected with Darius's jaw with a crack that echoed through the room. Darius staggered back, but didn't fall. He touched his split lip, examining the blood. "Are you done?" "I'm going to kill you." Riker's voice was pure rage. "No," Darius said quietly. "You're not. Because of the blood oath. You kill me, you die. And then who protects her?" His gaze cut to Nyx, and she saw the calculation there, the way he was using Riker's feelings against him. "You're a monster," Riker breathed. "I'm what our parents made me. Cold, strategic, willing to do whatever it takes." Darius straightened, his expression unreadable. "The difference is, I accepted it. You're still trying to be the hero." "Get out!" Riker's voice dropped, dangerous and low. "Get out before I forget the oath and kill you anyway." For a long moment, Darius didn't move. Then he nodded once, sharp. "We'll finish this conversation later, when you're thinking clearly." He left, the two wolves trailing behind him. Mora hesitated in the doorway, then quietly pulled the broken door as closed as it would go and disappeared. The silence that followed was suffocating. Riker stood with his back to Nyx, his shoulders heaving with each breath. When he finally turned to face her, his eyes were devastated. "You knew," he said hoarsely. "When I kissed you. You knew what you'd done." "No." Nyx stood on shaking legs. "I just remembered, right before he came." "You killed them." His voice cracked. "My mother, my father, my sister. I didn't have a choice. He controlled me, made me—" "I know." Riker's hands clenched into fists. "I know it wasn't your fault. I know you're a victim. But they're still dead. And your hands—" He couldn't finish, couldn't look at her. Nyx felt something inside her chest tear apart. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back." Riker's voice was hollow, empty, like the life had been drained out of him. And Nyx realized with horror that this was what Darius wanted, to break Riker, to take away the one thing that had made him feel alive. She'd been the weapon that killed his family, and now she was the weapon destroying what was left of him. The weight of Riker's silence was crushing. Nyx stood frozen, watching the devastation play across his face, the rawness of his grief, the war between what he knew intellectually, that she'd been a puppet, and what his heart felt seeing the person who'd killed his family standing in front of him. "Say something," Nyx whispered. "Yell at me, hit me, anything but this." "I can't." Riker's voice was wrecked. "I look at you and I see—" He stopped, jaw working. "I see her, my sister. She had your eyes, same color, same shape. And you—" "I know." The tears came now, hot and unstoppable. "I remember it. I remember all of it. The way she looked at me, confused, because I sounded like someone she trusted. The way she—" Nyx's voice broke. "I'm sorry isn't enough. Nothing I say will ever be enough." Riker turned away. His hands braced against the wall. His shoulders shook, and Nyx realized he was crying too. Silent, devastating sobs that tore at something fundamental in her chest. She wanted to go to him, touch him, offer comfort she had no right to give. But the distance between them felt infinite now, carved by blood and betrayal. "He used us both," Nyx said quietly. "Darius. He made me into a weapon and aimed me at your family. Then he spent 6 years making you believe you were hunting me when all along." "I know what he did." Riker's voice was rough, scraped raw. "And it doesn't change the fact that they're dead. That I've been sleeping 10 feet from their killer. That I—" He stopped abruptly. "That you what? That I fell for you?" The admission came out angry, bitter. "I fell for the person who murdered everyone I loved." "What does that make me?" "Human." Nyx moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. It makes you human. You didn't know. I should have known. Riker spun to face her, and the anguish in his eyes stole her breath. Some part of me should have recognized, but I was too busy feeling alive for the first time in 6 years to question it. Darius planned this. He brought me here knowing this would happen. Of course he did. Riker's laugh was hollow. He probably counted on it, breaking me down so I'd be easier to control. And it's working. Then don't let it work. Nyx closed the distance between them, her hands finding his chest. Fight him. We both do. Together. How? His hands came up, circling her wrists, not pushing her away, just holding on like she was the only solid thing in his world. The blood oath means I can't kill him. The weapons he has embedded in the pack mean we can't expose him without getting everyone slaughtered. And he's been building this network for years. We have nothing. We have the truth. The truth gets us killed. Riker's grip tightened on her wrists. He gave you an out, safe passage to Canada, disappear, and he won't hunt you. And leave you here with him? I can handle Darius. No, Nyx said fiercely. You can't. Not alone. Not when he spent 6 years learning exactly how to break you. Her voice dropped. If I leave, you'll shut down again. Go numb, and he'll own you. Maybe that's better. The defeat in his voice was worse than his anger. Maybe I deserve. She kissed him. It was desperate and probably wrong, and she didn't care. She needed him to feel something other than grief. Needed to break through the numbness she could see creeping back into his eyes. For a second, he didn't respond. Then his control shattered. His hands released her wrists to tangle in her hair, angling her head as he kissed her back with bruising intensity. It wasn't gentle. It was raw and desperate, like he was trying to burn away the pain with heat. Nyx's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. His scent wrapped around her, pine and smoke and something darker, wilder. When his teeth caught her lower lip, the sharp sting sent electricity racing down her spine. They broke apart, gasping. Riker's forehead dropped to rest against hers, both of them breathing hard. I can't do this, he said against her mouth. I can't want you and hate what you've done, and I know. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. But I'm not leaving you. I won't. You should. His hands slid down her sides, settling on her hips. Darius will kill you if you stay. Then we kill him first. The oath doesn't say anything about me killing him. Nyx pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm not bound by your father's magic. If we can prove what he's done, if we can remove the threat of the embedded weapons, then I can... No. Riker's voice was hard. I won't let you become a killer again, even for me, especially for me. I'm already a killer. The words tasted like ash. 23 wolves in your pack alone. Dozens more across the other territories. One more won't. It will. His hands came up to cup her face. You are a puppet, a tool. Killing Darius by choice. That's different. That's something you'll carry forever. And what's the alternative? We let him win? We find another way. Riker's thumb traced her cheekbone. There's always another way. A sharp knock interrupted them. They sprang apart as Vera pushed the broken door open, her expression grim. We have a problem, Vera said without preamble. Marcus just called an emergency pack meeting. He's demanding a vote on Nyx's exile. Tonight. Riker's expression darkened. Darius approved this? Darius is the one who suggested it. Vera's gaze cut to Nyx, something like sympathy in her eyes. He said new evidence came to light, that she's too dangerous to keep alive. He's forcing my hand, Riker said, the realization hardening his voice. Vote for exile and lose her, or vote against it and split the pack. There's a third option, Nyx said quietly. I confess. Tell them what I am, what I've done. Give them the truth. And then they'll tear you apart, Riker shot back. The pack won't care that you were controlled. They'll only see the ghost wolf standing in front of them. Maybe I deserve that. No. The word was sharp, final. You don't get to give up. Not after making me feel again. Not after... He stopped, jaw tight. Not after what? His eyes met hers, raw and vulnerable. Not after making me realize I want to live. Really live, not just survive. The confession broke something open in her chest. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Multiple sets, moving fast. Darius appeared in the doorway, flanked by Marcus and 4 other wolves. His expression was carved from ice, but something in his eyes looked almost satisfied. The pack is assembled, Darius said, his voice flat. Time to face judgment. This is a setup, Riker said, not moving from Nyx's side. This is democracy. Darius's gaze flicked between them, taking in their proximity, the obvious tension. The pack deserves to choose whether they want to harbor a potential threat. You mean whether they'll let you murder her legally? Riker corrected. I mean exactly what I said. Darius stepped into the room. Come willingly or be dragged. Either way, the vote happens tonight. Nyx felt Riker tense beside her, his body coiling for a fight. She put her hand on his arm, stopping him. I'll go, she said quietly. No violence. Nyx, if I run, they'll hunt me. If you fight them, you'll give Darius exactly what he wants, a reason to have you removed as alpha. She squeezed his arm. I'll face them, tell the truth. Let them decide. They'll vote for exile, Vera said bluntly, or execution. Marcus has been poisoning them against you for days. Then that's what happens. Nyx turned to face Darius, lifting her chin. I'm ready. Darius's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or concern that she wasn't reacting the way he'd planned. Riker stays here, Darius said. This vote is about her, not him. The hell I'm staying here. Riker moved to stand beside Nyx, his shoulder brushing hers. Where she goes, I go. That's not wise, Darius said quietly. The pack already questions your judgment when it comes to her. Standing with her now will only... I don't care. Riker's voice was steel. I'm done hiding, done pretending. If they want to vote on whether she lives or dies, they'll do it with me standing right beside her. The 2 brothers stared at each other, and Nyx could feel the weight of 6 years of lies and manipulation pressing down on them both. Riker knew the truth now, knew what Darius was, and Darius knew that Riker knew. The question was, what would Darius do about it? Fine, Darius said finally. Let's go. The pack is waiting. They walked through corridors that had become familiar over the past days, but now felt hostile, threatening. Wolves lined the walls, their expressions ranging from fear to anger to grim satisfaction. The main hall was packed. Every member of Blackwater Crossing stood in a rough circle, leaving space in the center. Marcus stood at the front, arms crossed, radiating triumph. Nyx stepped into the center, Riker at her side. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her, judging, condemning. Darius moved to stand opposite them, his expression unreadable. The pack is assembled. Marcus, present your case. Marcus stepped forward. 3 days ago, we brought an unknown Omega into our territory. Since then, we've had 2 rogue attacks, discovered scent markers designed to draw enemies to our location, and uncovered evidence of blood magic contamination. His gaze locked on Nyx. She's a weapon, designed to infiltrate and destroy. Every moment she remains here, we're at risk. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. And what evidence do you have that she's working against us? Riker demanded. The scent markers could have been placed by anyone. She has no memory of placing them. Convenient, Marcus sneered. How many times will we accept I don't remember as an excuse? As many times as it takes to get to the truth, Riker shot back. The truth, Marcus said, his voice rising, is that she's dangerous. unpredictable, and keeping her here risks everything we've built. He turned to address the crowd. I call for a vote, exile or death. Those are the only options that guarantee our safety. No, Nix's voice cut through the noise. Those aren't the only options. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her. There's a third option, Nix continued, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. The truth, all of it, about what I am, what I've done, and who's really been pulling the strings. Darius's expression went cold. Careful. Why? Nix turned to face him fully. You wanted this, wanted me exposed, wanted the pack to see me as the threat. So let's give them the whole truth. You don't know what you're doing, Darius said quietly, and there was warning in his voice. I know exactly what I'm doing. Nix turned back to the assembled pack. My name is Nix. I'm 22 years old, and 6 years ago I was kidnapped and turned into a weapon through blood magic conditioning. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. I was trained to mimic voices, scents, fighting styles, made into an infiltrator and assassin. For 6 years I killed on command, with no will of my own. Her voice shook but didn't break. I'm the ghost wolf you've been hunting. I killed the Alpha family, 23 members of the original Silverbrook pack, and dozens of others across 4 territories. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's expression was triumphant. She admits it. I'm not finished, Nix said, her gaze finding Darius. I was a puppet, and the person who held the strings, who created me and used me to murder his own family, is standing right there. The voice came from the entrance. Every head turned. Mora stood in the doorway, and beside her was an older male wolf Nix didn't recognize. He looked ancient, his face carved with scars, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Elder Thane, Darius said, and for the first time, Nix heard something like uncertainty in his voice. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making the same mistake your father did, Thane said, his voice carrying across the hall. Letting pride and power corrupt what should have been protected. He moved into the center of the circle, his gaze sweeping across the assembled wolves. I'm the one who bound the twins with the blood oath, and I'm the one who's been tracking the disappearances across our territories for 6 years. His eyes locked on Darius. I know what you are, what you've done, and it ends tonight. The hall erupted into chaos. Wolves shouted questions, accusations flying in every direction. Marcus looked between Elder Thane and Darius, confusion warring with suspicion on his scarred face. Riker's hand found Nix's, fingers threading through hers in a grip that was both protective and desperate. Darius stood perfectly still, his expression carved from ice. But Nix could see the calculation in his eyes. The way he was assessing exits, counting allies, determining his next move. That's a serious accusation, Elder, Darius said, his voice dangerously calm. One you'll need to prove. I have proof. Thane gestured, and Mora stepped forward carrying a leather satchel. 6 years of tracking, documentation of every disappearance, every pattern, every thread that leads back to you. Circumstantial evidence, Darius countered. Nothing that proves. I have testimonies from 3 of your embedded weapons, Thane continued, and Nix saw Darius's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Wolves you placed in other packs, wolves who broke through your conditioning just like she did. He nodded toward Nix. They've been talking for months, comparing notes, building a case. Marcus stepped forward, his expression hardening as realization dawned. You're saying our Alpha orchestrated the massacre? Killed his own parents? I'm saying he's been playing a very long game, Thane said, using blood magic to create weapons, embedding them in rival packs, systematically eliminating anyone who stood in his way. His gaze cut to Riker, including using his own twin as an unwitting accomplice. Riker's grip on Nix's hand tightened painfully. She could feel him trembling with barely controlled rage. "This is insane," one of the wolves near the back shouted. "Why would an alpha kill his own family?" "Power," Nick said quietly, and the room fell silent. He wanted absolute control. His parents were too compassionate, too willing to form alliances instead of dominating through fear. They were obstacles. "And his sister?" Marcus demanded, his voice harsh. What threat was a 12-year-old child? "She would have grown up like them," Nick said, the words tasting like ash. "Soft, weak, a liability he couldn't afford." The horror on the surrounding faces was visceral. Wolves stepping back, hands going to weapons, the crowd's energy shifting from confused to dangerous. Darius surveyed the room with cold detachment. Interesting theory, but theories aren't evidence. And even if any of this were true, which it isn't, you have no proof I personally did anything. "Actually," Thane said, pulling something from Mora's satchel, "I do." He held up a small glass vial filled with dark liquid. "Blood magic leaves traces, residue in the caster's blood that can be detected years later." His expression was grim. "I took samples from every alpha in the region 6 months ago. Routine health checks, or so I told them. Yours came back positive for forbidden magic, multiple types, including the specific compound used in memory conditioning." Darius's expression didn't change, but Nick saw his shoulders tense. Saw the subtle shift in his stance that meant he was preparing for violence. "You're lying," Darius said flatly. "Am I?" Thane stepped closer. "Then submit to a fresh test, right here, right now." "Prove me wrong." The silence that followed was suffocating. Every eye in the room locked on Darius, waiting for his response. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then his lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Clever," Darius said quietly. "You've been planning this for months, building your case, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." His gaze swept the room. "But you've made one critical error." "And what's that?" Thane asked. "You assumed I'd come here alone." The words had barely left his mouth when 3 wolves in the crowd moved. Nyx recognized them vaguely, reformed rogues Riker had brought into the pack over the past year. They moved with the same empty precision she remembered from her own conditioning, hands going to concealed weapons. "No," Riker breathed, horror dawning in his voice. "You brought them here, the embedded weapons." "Insurance," Darius confirmed. 3 weapons, fully activated, with orders to eliminate anyone who threatens me." His expression was merciless. "You want to expose me, Elder? Fine, but everyone in this room dies first." The 3 weapons spread out, forming a triangle around the crowd. Wolves scrambled back, but there was nowhere to go. The hall had only 2 exits, and the weapons had positioned themselves to control both. Marcus drew his blade, his expression furious. "You treasonous—" One of the weapons moved faster than sight, and Marcus went down with a blade through his shoulder. He screamed, the sound cutting off as the weapon's hand clamped over his mouth. "Nobody moves," Darius said calmly. "Nobody speaks, or the next strike is fatal." Nyx felt rage building in her chest. Hot and consuming. The warmth spread through her palms, the earth magic responding to her emotion. Vines stirred beneath the stone floor, hungry and waiting. Riker's hand squeezed hers in warning. "Don't," he whispered. "You move. People die." "People are going to die anyway," Nyx shot back, her voice low. "He's not letting anyone walk out of here alive." "Actually," Darius said, clearly having heard her, "I'm willing to negotiate. Thane, you and your evidence leave. Tonight. Head north and never return. Everyone else stays silent about what they've heard, and the weapons stand down." "And if we refuse?" Thane's voice was steady, but Nyx could see the fear in the surrounding wolves' eyes. Then I activate every weapon I have embedded across 4 territories, 37 in total. Darius's smile was cold. Simultaneous strikes on every major pack. Thousands dead by morning. Your choice, Elder. Your silence for their lives. Thane's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Darius pulled something from his pocket. A small carved stone that pulsed with dark energy. This is the master trigger. Blood magic keyed to every weapon I've created. One word from me and they all activate. He held it up for the room to see. So, do we have a deal? The weight of impossible choice pressed down on everyone. Nyx could see it in their faces. The Elder could expose Darius, but thousands would die. Or they could stay silent and let a monster keep his throne. There's another option, Nyx said, her voice cutting through the tension. Darius's eyes narrowed. And what's that? Me. Nyx stepped forward, pulling free from Riker's grip. You said I'm a failed weapon, that my conditioning broke, but we both know that's not entirely true. Part of me still remembers, still knows how to access the network. Nyx, no! Riker started, but she kept moving. If I can connect to the other weapons through the blood magic, Nyx continued, her gaze locked on Darius, I can sever their connection to you, break the conditioning from the inside. Darius's expression shifted to something calculating. That would require you to fully embrace what I made you, to become the weapon again. I know. It could destroy your mind, leave you as empty as they are. I know that too. Nyx stopped in front of him. But if it saves them, if it stops you, then it's worth it. Nyx, don't do this, Riker said, his voice breaking. There has to be another way. There isn't. She turned to face him, memorizing the devastation in his eyes. And we both know it. Thane stepped forward. If you can truly break the conditioning, I can help. Guide you through the connection. But once you're in, you'll have maybe minutes before the magic consumes you. Then we'd better work fast. Nyx turned back to Darius. Give me the trigger stone. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll kill you right here. The vines erupted from the floor around Darius's feet, wrapping around his ankles with crushing force. And before you die, I'll make sure everyone knows what you are. Darius looked down at the vines, then back at her face. Whatever he saw there made something like respect flicker in his expression. You've grown a spine, he said quietly. The conditioning really is broken. Give me the stone, Darius. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. The carved stone sat in his palm, pulsing with dark energy. Nyx reached for it, and Riker's hand shot out, grabbing it first. No, Riker said, his voice rough. If someone's connecting to that network, it's me. You can't, Nyx started. I'm his twin. Blood magic responds to bloodline. Riker's eyes met hers, fierce and determined. If anyone can override his control, it's me, not you. Riker, you've carried enough. His free hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. You've been his weapon for 6 years. You don't get to sacrifice yourself again. Not for me, not for anyone. If you do this, it could kill you, Nyx said, her voice breaking. Then I die stopping him. Riker's expression softened. That's better than living knowing I let him win. Before she could argue, he turned to Thane. What do I do? Hold the stone. Open yourself to the blood magic. Find the threads connecting him to the weapons. Thane moved closer, his hand settling on Riker's shoulder. I'll anchor you, keep you from getting lost, but you have to move fast. The magic will fight you. Riker nodded once. He looked at Darius, and the hatred in his eyes was absolute. This ends now. He closed his fist around the stone. The effect was immediate and violent. Riker's back arched, his eyes going white as magic surged through him. Around the room, the 3 embedded weapons collapsed, their connection to Darius severed in an instant. Darius snarled, lunging forward, but Nyx's vines wrapped around him, holding him in place. He fought against them with savage strength, but she poured everything she had into the magic, keeping him trapped. Riker was shaking now, blood trickling from his nose. There's too many. I can't reach them all. Yes, you can, Nyx said fiercely, moving to his side. You're stronger than him, stronger than the magic. Fight. His hand found hers, gripping tight enough to hurt. Help me. Nyx didn't hesitate. She let her magic flow into him, sharing her strength. The vines connected them, creating a bridge between her earth magic and the blood magic coursing through him. Together, they pushed. Across 4 territories, 37 weapons gasped as their conditioning shattered, threads of magic snapping one by one until the network collapsed entirely. The trigger stone cracked in Riker's hand, then shattered into dust. Riker collapsed. Nyx caught him, sinking to her knees as his weight dragged them both down. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. No, she whispered, her hands on his face. No, stay with me, Riker, please. His eyes opened, still human, still aware. Did it work? It worked. Tears streamed down her face. You broke the network, all of them. A weak smile touched his lips. Good. Around them, the pack erupted into motion. Wolves subduing the 3 collapsed weapons, others moving to secure Darius, who'd gone eerily still in the vine's grip. Thane crouched beside them, his hand on Riker's pulse. He's stable. Weak, but stable. The magic didn't consume him. Relief crashed through Nyx so violently she couldn't breathe. Thank you, she whispered against Riker's forehead. Thank you for not leaving me. Never, he said hoarsely. Never leaving you. Marcus, clutching his injured shoulder, limped over to where Darius was restrained. What do we do with him? The council will decide, Thane said. He'll stand trial for his crimes, face justice for every life he's taken. Justice won't bring them back, Riker said quietly, his eyes on his brother. Won't undo what he's done. No, Thane agreed, but it's a start. Darius finally spoke, his voice eerily calm despite the vines crushing him. You think this changes anything? You think destroying my network stops what I started? His eyes locked on Riker. I made you into a weapon just as surely as I made her. You'll always be what I forged you to be. No, Riker said, his hand tightening in Nyx's. I won't. Because unlike you, I chose to feel. Chose to care, chose to fight for something other than power. He looked at Nyx, and the emotion in his eyes made her chest ache. I choose her. Every time. Darius's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been regret. Then it was gone, replaced by cold indifference. Take him to the holding cells, Thane ordered. Post guards, and get a healer for Marcus and anyone else injured. Wolves moved to obey, dragging Darius from the hall. He didn't fight, didn't resist, just watched Riker with unreadable eyes as he was led away. When he was gone, the hall slowly emptied, wolves dispersing, their voices low and shaken. Mora approached, helping Riker to his feet with Nyx supporting his other side. You need rest, Mora said firmly. Both of you. Let me check you over. They made it to Riker's quarters, a space Nyx had never seen, warmer and more lived in than her stone prison. Mora examined them both, declared them physically intact if emotionally shattered, and left with strict orders to sleep. The door closed, leaving them alone. Nyx sat on the edge of Riker's bed, her hands shaking with aftershock. What happens now? Now? Riker lowered himself beside her, wincing. The council tries Darius. We hunt down any weapons he might have missed, rebuild what he destroyed. And us? He turned to face her, his hand finding hers. That depends. Can you forgive me for being the reason you were taken? For having a brother who destroyed your life? Can you forgive me for killing your family? You didn't kill them. He did, using you. Riker's thumb traced circles on her palm. But I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt, that I don't see their faces when I look at you. I know, her voice was small. I see them too. But I also see you, he continued, his voice rough. The person who saved my life, who made me feel again, who was willing to sacrifice everything to stop him. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. That's who you are. Not what he made you, but who you chose to become. Nix leaned into his touch, tears slipping free. I don't know how to be anything other than broken. Then we'll figure it out together. He pressed his forehead to hers. Both of us, broken and healing and trying. Together, she whispered. Together, he confirmed. He kissed her then, soft and gentle, and nothing like their previous desperate collisions. This kiss was a promise, a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, Riker's expression was serious. It won't be easy. The pack will need time to accept you, to understand what you were versus what you are now. I know. And I'll need time to grieve, to process. His hand tightened on hers. But I'm not walking away. Not from you. Not from this. Relief flooded through her. Neither am I. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened settling over them. Finally, Riker stood, pulling her to her feet. Stay. Tonight. Here. With me. It wasn't a question, wasn't a demand, just an offer. A choice. Nix looked at him, at this man who'd been broken and was choosing to heal, who'd been used and was choosing to fight, who'd been numbed and was choosing to feel, and knew her answer. Yes, she said simply. They lay down together, fully clothed, wrapped in each other's arms. No promises of forever, no grand declarations, just two shattered people choosing to face tomorrow together. Outside, dawn was breaking over the mountains. A new day, a new beginning. And for the first time in 6 years, Nix closed her eyes and didn't dream of blood. She dreamed of pine and smoke and the steady rhythm of Riker's heartbeat beneath her palm. She dreamed of home. The end. If you loved Nix and Riker's story, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below telling me which moment had you on the edge of your seat and what story you want to see next. Your support keeps these stories coming. But one question lingers. Would you forgive Nix if it were you? Thank you for being here.